It appears there's no debate around my sex appeal. Happy Wednesday, everyone. So people are accusing last night's debate moderators of teaming up against Trump while letting Kamala slide. True, Trump was constantly under attack by the moderators, so much so you'd think they were working from a slanted roof. Felt like an ambush, you know, with Kamala and the moderators jumping all over Trump. I haven't seen a 3-on-1 that disturbing since I was at that Golden Girls after party. I just watched. It's what I like to do. Understandably, the moderators were heavily criticized for their bias, but David Muir seemed completely unmoved by the critiques. In a biased fact check of Trump, Muir claimed crime is down using discredited data from the FBI. Wow, David's so gullible, he probably still believes those photos I took of him really were for a charity calendar. Joke's on you. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris referred to January 6th as the greatest attack on American democracy since the Civil War. She said this the day before, September 11th. That's like saying you had a terrible seat at the theater to marry Todd Lincoln.
Too soon?
Ah, some Lincoln truthers here. Second shooter, huh? Despite troops in Iraq, Syria, and sailors in the Middle East, Kamala Harris claims there was not one American troop in war zones. That's only true about Tim Walz. But less than an hour after the debate ended, the Harris campaign challenged Trump to a second debate in October. Her only demands are that they add more objective moderators. Meanwhile, Kamala was noted for her exaggerated facial expressions. Here she is reacting to Donald Trump's comments on the Afghanistan withdrawal. You guys like some art. All right, monologue. So as crime remains a major issue in the presidential election, American voters got to witness yet another felony firsthand. It was last night when you saw an entire network sneak up on a candidate and mug him. Instead of asking Trump to shake her hand at the start, Harris should have asked him to hand over his wallet, watch, and phone. But ABC's blatant assault wasn't just on Trump, it was also an attack on you, the voter. Because last night, an entire network decided that their own politics was more important than answering the one question every unsure voter wanted answered. Who the hell is Kamala Harris? The repulsive pair of moderators obliterated your right to know, denying once again the nation a fair and honest election for our highest office. It truly was the first DEI debate, where different standards were enforced on Trump while Harris had none. Worse, the moderators' contempt for us is so total they didn't care who saw it. But hey, what's your reputation as a news network when you got an election to sabotage? They now have less credibility than Hamas at a bar mitzvah. Now, I could go over all the times Trump was fact-checked by the moderators and Harris wasn't, or how the host pressed Trump for multiple follow-ups but didn't for Harris. But it's 10 p.m., and by now you've heard all that news. I swear, if I hear 3 against 1 one more time, I'm going to cancel my group massage with Hanson. It was clear that Lindsey Davis and David Muir gave Kamala the easiest night she's had since Willie Brown ran out of Viagra. Terrible. I apologize. Rather than a policy debate, we got ABC baiting Trump and Kamala piling on. It was designed to make Trump look bad and avoid forcing Harris to explain why she's flipped every position like she did burgers at her make-believe job at McDonald's. She lied at will without a single fact check, even trotting out the Fine People, Project 2025, and bloodbath hoaxes. All three are provable lies. But nothing from Muir and Lindsey, who might as well have been wearing Kamala 2024 hats. Muir's would have had to have been a triple XL. The guy's head is like a microwave with a hairpiece. But perhaps the greatest unmasked question was how Kamala got to be on that stage in the first place. How could the moderators not have asked her about why she hid Biden's dementia from the American people? It took Trump to ask her who is actually running the country right now. What's scary is she didn't have an answer for that either. They didn't even bother with Kamala's newly posted policy agenda, a cut-and-paste job from Joe Biden's old campaign website. Wouldn't that seem relevant to a woman who kept repeating, "I have a plan"? It's clear. ABC f***ed the American public. They torpedoed... I would say hold your applause, but I know it's hard. They torpedoed the one opportunity for voters to see who Harris really was. And now there's no way that you can actually judge who won or lost the debate. It's like trying to guess the price of a painting once you know it's a forgery. And that's what this debate was, about as real as Rachel Levine's periods. The Dems could say they won, but the public lost. This was the one chance for America to see Harris unvarnished, and ABC chose to varnish her. But you also got to ask, why would Kamala risk trotting out all those debunked hoaxes? Because she knew the fix was in. They were going to run cover for her. It's kind of like me picking a fight at a bar with Tyrus by my side. Why worry? I'll sit back and drink a beer and then take credit for everything. But you also got to wonder why ABC would tank its reputation and spit on the American public to prop her up. They must know her campaign's in trouble, and that meant emergency surgery. But not on Kamala, on Trump. Make him look as ugly as possible so she looks better. And his angry reaction is what they wanted. They created an ambush to elicit his rage, then they could say, "Oh, look at his anger." It's like asking, why are Brian Kilmeade's arms flailing as you try to drown him in a bathtub? He puts up a struggle. Meanwhile, you learn nothing of Harris as intended. This is inflation is still double digits, our border still doesn't exist, and our inner cities are descending into unlivable hellholes. You'd think two so-called journalists on a major network might have noticed, but expecting honesty from ABC is like expecting integrity from pond scum. Oh, same thing. Let's welcome tonight's guest. She's our favorite Tulsi because no one else is named Tulsi. Member of the Trump transition team, Tulsi Gabbard. He looks like the guy who craps on your sidewalk. Oh, wait, that is him. Founder of StudioTSC.com, Michael Lofton. She's like Madonna from Michigan and 66 years old. New York Times bestselling author, Fox News contributor, Kat Tiff.
Pregnant, nice job.
And you could go sledding on his toenails. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NWA world champion, Tyrus. Tulsi, you're on Trump's transition team. What did you make of last night? Were you surprised how the moderators heavily weighted the debate?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I think it was what we should all have expected. We see how these people operate. You know, you look at the comments that Muir has made, you look at the comments that Lindsay Davis has made, their bias was baked in from the very beginning because they're not real journalists.
Yeah.
They are essentially these political operatives whose job it is to try to distract away from Kamala Harris's record, distract away from the serious issues that we face. Not a single question was raised about how are you going to prevent the destruction of our country and the world from nuclear war, which we are closer to than ever before. And on the eve of the Islamist terrorist attack on 9/11, they did not raise a point, a question, or a challenge about how either of these candidates will stem the spread of this radical Islamist ideology around the world and in our own country here at home, and how you would prevent this threat from continuing to grow. So, you know, they were not at all interested in informing the American people about the truth about anything. We can expect that they will continue to be propagandists for Kamala Harris.
Do you think Trump could have been more prepared in that arena? I mean, I was caught off guard by the bias, but he knows they're going to come after him. Could he have not taken the bait as much, you think, maybe?
You know, the thing about Donald Trump is he's not a politician.
Yeah.
So unlike Kamala Harris, who spent the last week rehearsing scripted lines that pollsters wrote for her, you know, Donald Trump wears his heart on his sleeve. And so he had three people coming at him and, calling things out on him. And it was a very one-sided thing. I think the thing that Donald Trump did was he kept on, even as he got worked up in his answers about different things, he kept on bringing it back to higher cost of living under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, tens of millions of Americans streaming across our border, and the increasing crime in our communities. And those are the things that people are concerned about.
Loftus, everybody knows that you're homeless and a lesbian. And you have to typically scrounge for food. Were you offended or jealous when Trump talked about illegals eating pets? Did that?
I was a little jealous when I heard about cat eating. I'm like, what? I love that. I thought Trump had an amazing night, a completely amazing night. Like, he signed up for a debate and got Fight Club instead.
Yes.
Against like 3 different people. I would have left the room. Because you look at the moderators who looked like they just came off the set of Dick Tracy, right? You had Shoulders McGee and Captain No Face. And then Kamala Lala Ding Dong strolls in looking like Count Chocula. She took like 6 days to prepare. Oh, when he says something, I'm going to put my hand on my chin. Take that. And then her big response is, I have a plan.
Yeah.
And no details to the plan, which I invite everybody to try that in their real life. When Visa calls and like, hey, you missed a payment, and just go, I have a plan. I guarantee they won't be, oh, okay, take care, see you later, bye-bye.
God, what if that works? I'm actually going to try that when I get home. Kat, were you somehow distracted by David Muir's dreamy stare?
I thought you were going to say Dave Grohl's Secret Baby.
Hey, wait a minute.
What chapter is that in?
In which case, I kind of was distracted. We expected that from literally anyone else, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
whatever. No. I also think, look, I think that Republicans might have done a disservice by setting the bar so low for Kamala that she formed complete sentences. So people were like, wow, right?
Yeah.
But also the debate, I think it doesn't really matter that much. And I think that's never been clearer than the polling in the wake of the last debate, which, I mean, that changed the course of everything. Biden did so badly, they were like, oh, this man stopped being a part of public life almost entirely, right?
Yes.
And I saw a poll that I think Trump gained 1 point on him after that.
Yeah.
And Biden lost 2 points when the debate made it so clear that he needed to, not just like probably go to the hospital.
Right.
Right. So I think it's very interesting to view within the context of that also.
That is true. It's a good point. I think everybody's made their decisions except really strange people.
Yeah. I really strange.
That's a nice way of calling him, Greg.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know anybody.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm undecided.
Yeah.
Like, where have you been? Unless you're in outer space, that's the only thing you're allowed.
Infuriated as I was.
Okay, I'm gonna put it in the words of my 10-year-old daughter. Daddy, this is some. What is? It was the only time she didn't get in trouble for cussing. Listen, we know exactly we saw who Kamala is. We saw exactly the choices in this country. We have a person who's running as president to be president, and then we have the Socialist Party, which is putting their next puppet up. So he went into their home game, he went into their house, he sat on their couch, they served him the meal, it sucked, the drinks were warm, it was exactly what we thought it would do. The only thing that drove me completely insane was when every time they stopped, and this is a historic, you don't get to call yourself historic. Somebody else has to. Maybe on Twitter, they're like, wow, this is the most historic attempt at a debate I've ever seen in my life. You should be proud of that. I don't know. But there was one point that I think was his greatest moment in the debate, because the debate was a show because he knew what it was. And I'm sorry, but you can only get hit so many times you start hitting back, okay?
Yeah.
You want to talk, and you talked about his rallies. He's not the one with 5-star acts there going on before him to get everybody in.
Right.
And then when they stop singing, they leave. That's not him, Ma. That's you. But the thing that he did was when he talked about Obamacare, he said, we didn't have anything better. I didn't like it, but I wanted to help improve it. He showed he's willing to walk across lines for what's best for the American people. So I thought that was the biggest point of the debate, is that he showed he can work. What did she show? A lot of world leaders said, you're stupid and no one likes you. Only one question.
Yeah.
Like with and we own guns. 20. What kind?
Exactly.
I have a plan. Which one?
Yeah.
World leaders. Which one? None of them. So again, great debate in terms of seeing the fact that he's willing to go anywhere. He'll play on the road to be your president, and that's who you should want, because she won't come to another network, and Fox won't even put it in his side. They'll just call it straight down the line, but that's too dangerous because Goofy might come out. So
I think it's important to point out, too, that speaking of Goofy coming out, after an hour-and-a-half long debate with 3 people coming at him, Donald Trump walked off that stage. He's like, I want to go to the spin room where the hundreds of reporters are hanging out and go talk to them. And Kamala Harris got in her vehicle and went away.
She went to her congratulations speech and screwed it up. She did.
All right, we got to move on, kids. Up next, Swalwell's having bad dreams over cat memes.
If you'll be in the New York area and would like tickets to see Gutfeld, go to foxnews.com/Gutfeld and click on the link to join our studio audience.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.